Hello, everyone. It's Thursday Night Live. Welcome to our show. Hi, I'm Mike Elson, founder of VoiceLessons.com. And with me tonight, we have Dr. Matthew Edwards. Dr. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, this is my favorite time of the week. This is where we get to communicate and answer questions live on this show. So if you're tuning in today and you want to know something, you could be a singer, it could be a teacher, just drop your question in the chat. We will look at the chat a couple times. So drop that in and please ask questions as we go too. If something we say sparks another thought, I was wondering about that too, please. We love your questions. So let's jump into our first question for tonight. This one comes in from Jordan. Jordan writes in, can you explain the basic differences in mic technique for studio recording versus stage mics versus face mics?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep this answer relatively reasonably short tonight, but the truth is there's a lot of nuance to all of this. We're going to start, the first part of it is who's behind the soundboard, right? So if you have a soundboard operator who specializes in working, the kind of production you're in. So if you're in a rock band and you have a soundboard guy who understands sound, or if you've got someone behind the board and she does musicals all the time and you're in a musical, then they're going to know what they're doing and you can kind of just walk up on stage and sing. If you are, let's say, in a high school and you're trying to put on a high school musical and the person behind the board, they've never done much with singers, then you might have to adapt things a little bit, right? Ideally, you want to be able to just kind of sing the way that you sing and have everything be amplified while knowing what you can get away with the technology. So let's talk about that. In the recording studio, these microphones that we use are super sensitive. And you can really get away with real quiet singing, and it's going to project your voice really well. And it's going to make it appear like live and in your face. By the same token, if you walk in onto one of those recording studio microphones and you come in and try to sing operatically, it's going to overblow what's called the diaphragm of the microphone, which is what helps pick up the sound. And if the engineer isn't comfortable working with singers like that, or they don't have the right microphone, it can be a real problem where you have to really instead kind of taper back how much volume you use. In a recording studio, they have the ability to go punch things in, to bring levels up, take levels down, use a compressor to even things out. So you might be able to plant yourself at one distance from the microphone and sing everything at that distance. Then again, they might have you come up closer to the microphone and sing the breathy parts of your song. And they might have you take a step or two back and really belt out the high parts of the song. Now, you don't get that same opportunity when you're working on stage with a stage mic. When you have a stage mic, if they just kind of have set the volume levels and you've got to go with it, you're going to have to use some mic technique, right? So you're going to want to be able to hold the microphone close up when you're singing breathy, get it real close to your mouth, and then start to slowly create some distance as you get louder, or keep it somewhere in the middle when you're in more of like a speech-like volume. So on that stage, like, you're going to be moving a lot. Whereas if you're in a recording studio on a studio mic and you start moving around a lot, you're really going to hear those sound shifts. Now, if you are using a face mic, everything is fixed. And in that instance, you're going to really need to trust the soundboard. You need somebody who can be back there riding the slider so that when you get softer, they can lift it up a little bit. And when you get louder, they can bring it down a little bit. Now, if you don't have that, you're going to have to really think about that yourself. And you're going to have to do that with your voice. So on a stage mic, you can use the microphone movement a little bit to help vary up some of those dynamics. But with the face mic on, you're going to have to do it purely by voice. Those face mics that we use are usually what's called an electret condenser microphone. So they're similar to the same sensitivity as what you have in a recording studio, but it's a much smaller microphone and it's way less sensitive. We don't want it picking up a bunch of stage noise. And so when you've got, that kind of microphone on, it can still pick up that breathy singing, especially if it's close to the corner of your mouth. But there are times where they're going to mount it somewhere that isn't near the corner of your mouth. And so if they mount it up here on your forehead, for instance, in a musical, it may not pick up that real breathy sound. And you might have to make that breathy sound a little bit louder. And the benefit, though, is that with it all the way up here, when you really belt something out, it's not going to blow the microphone. It's not going to be too loud, right? So they make mic placements based off of, the engineer's preferences, the costuming preferences, as well as what you're singing and what kind of amplification we need for that. Now, if you're in a golden age musical and it's just kind of enhancing your natural sound, that's a different need for the microphone than if you're doing something like Tommy or Rock of Ages that's really reliant on the microphone to get the boost necessary for that rock style of singing. So to kind of summarize, Jordan, a lot of it's going to depend on who's behind the board. If you have somebody behind the board that's really experienced, you might be able to just walk in and they'll take care of everything and you just focus on your singing. If you're not in that situation, you're going to have to be a little bit more active in your involvement. In a recording studio setting, you're going to want to try to find a nice middle ground distance. And you might have to ask them if you can, if you're not getting the breathy qualities you want and they're not sure what you're doing, say, maybe let me step a little bit closer to the mic and see if that picks it up. Or if you're overblowing the mic, you might want to suggest that you step back a little bit. You got to remember, some people in some studios, they're like instrumentalists first, not singers. And if you're coming in with a singing style that's not what they're used to, you might have to help out a little bit by just making some suggestions. If you step up onto a stage and with the stage mic, if you've got a great soundboard operator who's got compression and they're riding the sliders, you may be able to just stand there and sing and they'll take care of the rest. But if it's a more intimate setting, like a singer-songwriter setting or a jazz setting, where you want to have more dynamic control, or you have to have a bigger role in the dynamic control, that's where you're going to use pulling away and moving in with your dynamic shifts. And with head-mounted microphones, if it's close to the corner of your mouth, you're going to have a great ability to sing soft, but when it gets loud, it could get too loud. So if you don't have an engineer adjusting the sliders, you might want to move the microphone back a little bit, sing your breathier louder, and then that way you can still get your high notes, your belt notes, with the microphone back where it's not going to blare it out as much. And if you're going for something that's got any classical influence into it, or more acoustically projected singing style that doesn't have a lot of breathy singing, you might find that having it mounted right up here on the hairline might give you the better sound as well. So hopefully that'll help out and give you some ideas. Like I said, this is a topic that we could talk about for hours, and it's part of the artistic component of what we do. So there is also going to be varying opinions. Right? There's going to be some people that are going to, have some different points of view to share, and you got to find what works for you.
Awesome. Jordan, I hope that helps you. I was going to say, why don't you, write us back or drop us in the chat what kind of mic specifically you're using and, what setting you're using. And if you have any questions on that, we'd love to help you. So, okay, next question here comes from Jacob. I'd love to get to know more about vocal rest versus soft, healthy vocal exercises for cooling down.
Yeah. So this question came in and it's a little bit more full. It just wouldn't all fit on the screen. They said the vocal exercises that are meant to replenish your voice after working it out. They said, is there a line that can be crossed when cooling down? And that's what the rest of the question was. And so, yes, there is. There's not really a line that can be crossed as much as beyond doing it more than 5-10 minutes. Most of the time for cooling down, you don't really need more than 5 or 10 minutes of that. If you're absolutely vocally exhausted and you've got pain in your throat for some reason, your voice has just gone out. We can have a situation where as soon as you go to sing a note, your voice just disappears or goes out like a light switch. In that instance, it is possible that you've hemorrhaged a vocal fold, which means that you've burst one of the blood vessels on your vocal fold. It's not a medical emergency. A lot of people do this even just coughing. And as long as you stop talking and don't use your voice until it naturally comes back, in most instances, you're going to be okay. But if you try to push through that, if you're like, wow, I just lost my voice, maybe I should really force it to cool down, that could actually cause more problems. So that's a line you don't want to cross. Otherwise, the research on cooling down is still a little bit up in the air. We used to say that it was an absolute necessity, but then there was a study that was done that looked at people who just had a casual conversation after a practice or after a rehearsal versus people who went and did their cool down regimen. And the research showed it was statistically insignificant, the difference. So the suggestion is it may be possible that simply having some side conversations and light talking with people is enough of a difference from singing to cool the voice down. And, it's better than just shutting up immediately or, going out and partying. I would err on the safe side and go ahead, though, because that's only one study and we really need multiple studies to know for sure. And I would go and do some light straw phonation. And so if you're not familiar with straw phonation, you grab either some small, like coffee stirrer straws like this or a regular sized drinking straw. This is what I have near me. In my case, I like to use two of them at a time. I feel like it gives me a little bit of a better exercise than a single one. Again, you can use a regular drinking straw. You can even use like a milkshake straw, a bubble tea straw if you want something bigger. And what we're going to use this for is to provide a little bit of resistance to the airflow as it travels through our voice. And what that resistance does is it helps air kind of circulate back into the vocal folds and it creates a massage for the folds. And this is actually a voice therapy protocol. It's been, this whole exercise idea originated from research done by voice scientists. So we know that it does work. It does all the things that we say it does. We even have images where they've stuck cameras through someone's nose so they can watch what happens when they sing with straws. And we actually see the whole throat open up and the muscles around the vocal folds relax. So it's a really good thing for de-stressing your instrument. And all you really need to do is sustain pitches at first. You're just going to hold that as long as you can. Now, as you notice, man, even just after one, I hear my own voice change there. I'm telling you, these things work magic. So, but after you do these pitches, as you're doing the straw, you're allowing those cheeks to puff. You're allowing the voice to have a warm timbre on the inside. You can do it with a bright timbre, and you're actually just creating more tension. So that would sound like this. And when I'm doing that, I'm just in a tense place. We don't want that version of it. We want this version of it. And that warmth that comes in with doing that exercise that way is going to open up your throat. Now, after you've done some sustained pitches, you might want to do some light glides. And then you can test your voice and see how it feels. Now, as you notice with mine, I get a lot more warmth. I've been doing a lot of stuff with my kids today and playing and, having fun with them before I came down here to do the show. So my voice is a little tight. And I can tell as soon as I do that, it really relaxes everything out. Really, just grabbing those straws is enough for your cool down. And you don't need to do much more than that. Do some sustained pitches for like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then do some glides for maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And that should be enough. If you don't have straws with you, you can do blowfish. That's where you put your finger here and you do. So it's kind of like using your finger to create the resistance instead of a straw. If you don't have that, you can do lip trills. They require a little bit more airflow and tension release and focus. And so that's why I don't love them for a cool down exercise. We're trying to get things to release a little bit, not get all tensed up again. Then you can even do just regular humming, or tongue out hum, or an NG. And any of those are all going to give you some of that resistance that we're talking about to give you that nice vocal fold massage, and should be enough. Again, we're looking at maybe 5 to 10 minutes max. And we're not going to do this if you have any pain, any discomfort, any hoarseness showing up. Although if there is a little bit of hoarseness showing up, the straw exercises can actually help. The straw exercises can help open things up and set the vocal folds on a better vibrational pattern, which could actually be helpful. But not hoarseness to the point that it's really dysphonic, meaning your voice is really disappearing and going away. In that instance, I would just stop and give your voice a rest, and then maybe see if in an hour it's getting a little bit better. And if it is, do the straw exercises. And then we need to start investigating why your voice got that hoarse in the first place. Because if you're singing with, good technique, you shouldn't be getting completely hoarse after, any period of singing. So keep that in mind as well. But hopefully that'll help a little bit.
Awesome. I love it when we get these questions like this about, vocal safety and just protecting your voice and cooling down. So, Jacob, thanks for asking this question. I hope that helps everyone out there. Let's jump into question number three tonight. This one comes in from Susan, and I know we couldn't fit it all. So, Matt, can you explain a little bit more? She wanted to know more about flexible versus stable laryngeal position.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and read the whole question here that Susan sent in. She said, some teachers and voice training systems say that the larynx and the pharyngeal walls, so the pharyngeal walls are all the tissue that you see when you open your mouth. It's basically the tube that runs down your neck. It should be allowed to adjust the length and width of the vocal tract to allow for pitch or tube acoustics, meaning that there's shifts along the way that you need to make, and you should allow your body to make those shifts. Others say the larynx should be kept stable, which would mean that you try to just hold an open tube position and you don't allow the larynx or the pharynx to make any shifts. Can you please discuss this issue? When I eliminate compensatory tension in the upper body, so that means like you're trying to compensate by grabbing to make certain sounds. That's what she's saying. If you've eliminated that from the upper body, neck, shoulders, throat, tongue, or constrictor jaw muscles, etc., and just the larynx do what it wants, and I attain apogeo, which basically means like just maintaining a rib cage expansion, resisting the collapse, and shape my vowels efficiently, singing is easy. The larynx moves freely up and down, and the pharyngeal walls expand and contract with the pitch. I find this very comfortable. How does a stable laryngeal position type of technique compare? So this is a little bit more of a complex question, but it's a really good one. So here's what I think is important to remember. And we have to go back to the roots of classical singing. And in the roots of classical singing, they started kind of codifying specific vocal qualities. Okay, so there was this one idea in the early Catholic Church of musica angelica. And the idea was that you wanted the singers to have voices of angels. And so that kind of a voice or a vocal quality was meant to blend with the beautiful paintings that they were putting up in their chapels. And so you were trying to create a very specific vocal quality for a very specific need. And then people started teaching that. Now, as they continue to teach that, we eventually see that, music kind of adapts, choirs get a little bit bigger as buildings get bigger, and eventually we get opera. Then once we get opera, we start getting composers writing different kinds of shows. And in Germany, they start looking for a way to label the different kind of singer voices because it makes it easier to cast a show. It's one thing to send a letter to somebody in another city saying, I need a baritone for the role of Papageno. But there's all kinds of voices that are baritones, some that are really dark, some that are light, some that are really edgy. So they developed a system to label those. And so we have like a Helden baritone, a lyric baritone, a Verdi baritone, a Cavalier baritone. And all of those different labels then became a basis of training voices. So we started training voices to match specific sounds. That's the history of why we think so much in singing about, well, is that the right sound? Because there was a book that you would get, a Fach book that you could and there even was on bookshelves when I was an undergrad, where you could look up the different Fachs and the roles that would go with that, or the roles, and then see the Fach of singer that should sing that role. It's 2021. And the world's a different place. And if we are singing, even in the classical realm, there are a wide range of what we would call tonal goals. And the tonal goals in the classical world can vary from a more bright and resonant ringing ah to a deeper ah to anything in between. And that's where these debates or these conversations come up. If you allow the larynx to float or to move, you're allowing it to respond to what's happening in your body in any given moment. So, and I think I'm taking this point of view here because Susan said, I've eliminated compensatory tension. So that means you're under control of your instrument. If you're not, this isn't going to apply. In this instance, Susan is switching her registration. And as she does, her larynx is moving a little bit because the larynx does move with pitch changes. Okay. So as she's changing pitches, we see that moving up and down, her larynx moving up and down, and she's allowing it to happen. And then she is shaping her vowels. And when she shapes her vowels, she's getting changes in the way that the space in her throat is interacting. And she's shaping it to get the sounds that she wants, that I'm assuming she likes, and that she says feels good. And to me, all those three things mean that's the right technique for Susan. right? If it's something that feels good to you, you like the sound, and you're happy with what you're doing and there's no tension in the way, then that is your tonal goal. That's your unique signature sound. Now, another singer may desire more of a Germanic sound, or like just some people may say that the German sound isn't always deep. Depends what literature you read or what way you were trained. But a lot of German singers like a really kind of deep, held down laryngeal position. So they went, oh, they want that, oh, as they get to a high note. If you let your larynx float, you're not going to get that. You're going to get ah. That's letting the larynx be moving a little bit. Holding it stable is ah. That's that stable position. The stable position requires you to try to anchor your larynx down with 3 muscles that hold it down. And a lot of times singers end up trying to help those 3 muscles out by pushing their tongue down and back. So that kind of singing can really end up causing a lot of tension, and tension that's not good for a singer. So a stable technique is going to be more, or a stable laryngeal technique might be more likely to have some compensatory tension. Trying to keep your larynx stable will often require you to try to hold a more anchored neck position, because if I start to lift my chin a little bit, the larynx is going to rise up and I need to hold it down low, right? If I try to hold it low and then lift my neck, I really have to compensate down there for it. Also, holding that low laryngeal position, I can turn left to right, but I definitely feel more tension there than if I'm just in my regular speaking voice and turning left to right. So there are tensions that are involved because you're holding on to the 3 what are called the laryngeal depressors, the 3 muscles that pull that larynx down. So that is a tonal goal that some people like. And again, if they figured out a way to do it with freedom in a way that they like and their audiences like, then that's their signature sound and they can keep moving along with it. And I think that's what's key here, Susan, is that everybody has to find what they like. Now, I want to address this, though, over in the musical theater and contemporary commercial music world. The research is pretty clear that when the larynx is moving, it's having some impact on the acoustics. And what we know is that human emotions have different acoustic characteristics, different acoustic signatures. We know that when somebody's excited, their voice tends to get bright, and when somebody's sad, their voice tends to get low. And in commercial styles and musical theater styles, we're not trying to project our voice over an orchestra without a microphone the way that classical singers are. So we don't have to worry about the acoustics in the same way that a classical singer does when we're over here in the CCM world. In the CCM world, we want to let the story, the emotion lead the way, which really does require that larynx to rise and to be flexible. So I personally think that stable laryngeal positions don't have much of a place in CCM or musical theater styles. I think that it's dangerous to be trying to lock your larynx into one spot and move. Now, I know there is one methodology out there that really talks about that stable laryngeal position, but what I have encountered is a lot of singers who I've worked with who have been trained that way, whose high notes are always tight and they don't have all the high notes they want. And once we get that larynx to be free, which is undoing a major tenet of the training that they had, all of a sudden their high notes feel better and they have greater high notes. Now, I think it's important to know that some of these methodologies, including the one I'm talking about, are falling into what I would now consider historical methodologies. The creator is not actively engaged in research at this moment, and we are going on their past writings and past teachings and using those as the basis for training singers. And I think that's dangerous for any methodology, because the scientific advancements we've had in the last 20 years around voice science have uncovered all kinds of things that were mysteries to us. And now that we have some facts, or at least some images or some evidence, it may not be absolute facts, but strong evidence that certain things are happening, I think we have to honor that evidence and to adapt all of our teaching to it, right? When I started teaching, there was some evidence that the vocal folds bulked up and changed with training. So I taught others that through training, we were going to bulk up the vocal fold muscles, because one of the world's leading voice scientists has written about it. And there was a lot of talk at conferences about that happening in the muscle contour of the vocal folds. But within the last 3 years, there's a researcher in New York City who's been using rats who vocalize. That's an interesting story, but yes, there are vocalizing rats. And as they vocalize and exercise those folds, they then go in and measure for changes in the folds. And they're finding no significant changes, which seems to contradict the idea that the vocalis muscle actually grows with practice. We are starting to think it's more about neurological connections and the growth of stronger connections of the neurons to the muscle fibers that's actually responsible for what we perceive as an increase in strength. So, because of that, I've changed my approach in describing that. And I say, it's kind of up in the air right now, but more than likely it's neurological. So, I try to lead by example with saying if we get new evidence that contradicts something that we have believed in the past, that doesn't make us bad, that makes us scientists. Right? Scientists are always discovering things and they get some evidence and they think that they've had a good discovery. And then we get a new tool, we redo the research and we find out, oops, there was an error there that I didn't catch. Maybe this is how we do it instead. That's the frustrating thing about science, but that's also why we need more than one person doing the research. We need multiple research teams going and doing this work, because when you can really look at the big picture of the data, the metadata, that's where you're going to really find your answers.
Absolutely. That's a great explanation. And tune in next week, everyone. We're going to have singing rats on the show. I've got
For Halloween.
yeah, maybe some point. Maybe some, yeah, they're left over from the pumpkins. So, but Matt, I love that you're always bringing the latest research. So that's interesting, about bulking up the vocal cords. I wonder if it's the muscles around the vocal cords probably get a little stronger too.
It's possible, but I don't know that the thing that's really hard is to be able to examine that. We still don't have great equipment to really make those measurements. So I
Right.
think it's still one of those things that's a mystery. But, I have faith that with the advancement of the medical imaging technology, we're going to get to the point where we can maybe get some thickness measurements as well.
Yeah, yeah. I like that, at least right now we'll leave it to the realms of it's a neurological connection and they get stronger. So
Yeah.
everybody start bulking up and make sure you're doing your exercises for sure. And
Yes.
Susan, I hope that helps you. Let's tune into our next question that comes in from Amy. Amy writes in, can a person who is not good at singing become a good singer? And Amy, thank you for asking this question. This is like what I know so many people out there wonder, like, I'm not even going to try because, I got embarrassed or XYZ happened. So, thanks for asking this tough question. It's a good one to get out there. So, Matt, what kind of encouraging words do you have for Amy today?
Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes. And we've covered this question now. This is probably the 10th time. And I keep answering it because I want to dispel this myth, Amy. Everybody can learn to sing. The problem is people often try to sing music that's not right for their voice, and then they think they can't sing. Okay. If you have noticed, especially after I'm going to do my straw again. This is my speaking voice when I'm not doing my straw phonation. But if I get and I open up a little bit of that depth again, you're going to notice that I really am a baritone. This is my real voice. So if I go and I try to sing some Sam Smith songs, and that's my entry into singing, is let's say I never sung before, and I'm like, hey, I want to sing. I love Sam Smith. I'm going to start working on his stuff, and I love Adam Lambert. I'm going to work on his stuff. It's very likely that over the course of several weeks or months, I'm going to come to the realization that I can't sing. But I'm going to assume I can't sing anything. And the realization is, no, I can't sing Sam Smith or Adam Lambert songs. And there's a really simple explanation. I'm a baritone, they're tenors. Okay? And if I keep trying to sing music that my voice isn't a good fit for, yeah, I'm going to become convinced I can't become a good singer. However, if I jump on over and pick up some Johnny Cash, some Crash Test Dummies, maybe even some Pearl Jam, all of a sudden my voice is going to fit those songs, or I'm only going to have to transpose them ever so slightly, and they're going to fit like a glove, especially Johnny Cash. And then that's when you have the realization of that you can sing. It's just you can sing a different kind of music than where maybe you started. What we know about the body is that the brain controls every movement that we make, and the brain is a programmable, organ within our body. We can program the brain with practice, and we call the research in this area motor learning theory. And we have all kinds of researchers studying this and giving us great information about how to apply what they're finding. We know that anytime you try to take on any physical activity that's new, you go through 3 stages of learning. The first is the cognitive stage. The cognitive stage is where you realize, I don't know how to do this at all. I need a lot of help. And in that moment, you're going to really have to rely on others. But as you get information to improve the actions of your instrument, you're going to start to gain a bit of understanding about how it works, and things are going to start working in a more coordinated fashion. And you're going to start going, oh, I think I get this. As you start reaching that stage of thinking that you get it and just needing a little bit of help, that means that you've reached the cognitive or the motor learning stage. And in the motor learning stage, you're going to see progress every couple of weeks. You're going to notice that if you're working on getting a more speech-like quality, it gets easier and easier and easier until one day you open up your mouth and the speech-like quality comes out for the entire practice session. You're realizing you don't even have to really think about it. And that means you're finally in the automaticity stage. And that means your body has learned the new program. It can execute it on its own. And those movement patterns that you've needed to learn in order to be a better singer are now part of your being. And they're going to stick with you for a long time if you keep working on the skill. Every aspect of singing is that way. The problem is most singers want to wrap all of singing up into one motor skill, and it's not that way. We have to address the structure of the instrument, okay? The structure of the instrument includes the skeleton and all the muscles that help keep the skeleton upright. And we have to coordinate and balance out those parts of the body in order for our instrument to function optimally. Then we have to address respiration or breathing. We breathe all day long to speak, but we're only breathing at a small percentage of our full vital capacity. And what you need to do as a singer is learn how to really fill your lungs up full of air for when you need all that air, and then to let the air go and take smaller breaths when you don't need a lot of air. Then you want to try to get your vocal folds vibrating in a good pattern. And then you want to figure out how to use your words to get different vocal colors, different vocal stylistic traits to bring your songs to life. And when you're training to become a singer, you're going to have to work on all those different aspects of what you do. And as you're working through those parts, you're not going to get to be an overnight success, but you are going to see gradual improvement in all of these areas. And at first, you're going to think you're not good at singing because all of those little adjustments that you're making are going to be difficult for you. But if you keep working on it and keep just driving ahead and trusting the motor learning process, eventually you are going to coordinate those parts of your instrument and you will be able to sing as long as you're singing songs that are right for you. So yes, Amy, anybody who's not good at singing can learn to become a good singer. It just takes a lot of practice and trusting the motor learning process.
That's right. Okay. Well, I'm so glad that there's good news like that for everybody. So pick your favorite song and get ready for some karaoke coming up. All right. So here we go. Let's jump into our next question. This one comes in from God Bless. How can I activate vocal stamina? So first, let's go over what is vocal stamina and, how do you activate?
Yeah, so vocal stamina is the ability to sing for extended periods of time, right? So when you first start singing, you might be able to sing 15, 20 minutes before you start feeling a little fatigued. And you'll think, oh, this is all I can do. That may be all that you can do now. But if you keep practicing, it's going to get better and better. And over time, you're going to be able to sing for an hour, maybe even more. We get there by doing the work that we just talked about, which is tuning up your motor system. In order to get stamina, we need to make sure that your structure is balanced. That means that the bones of your skeleton are holding onto the weight of your body and distributing it across your pelvic girdle and down into your legs and onto the tripod of your feet. We don't want your muscles that are, part of your torso overly engaged trying to hold on and keep your body upright. If they are, that's going to take a lot of effort and it can actually give you a feeling that you lack stamina. Then the next thing we're going to want to do is make sure that your respiratory system is coordinated. To sing long lines and for long periods of time, you need to make sure that you can control inhalation and exhalation. We don't want you just breathing in and then immediately collapsing in. We want you to learn how to breathe in to keep your rib cage buoyant and expanded and let it slowly collapse inwards over time. As you are doing that work, you're going to be also then coordinating with what we call your registers. And so your registers is the balance of really chesty qualities, and really heady qualities, and finding everything in between. When you have mastered all of those qualities in between and have your respiratory system doing what you want, you then want to start building up this stamina. And one of the best ways to do it is with stamina exercises. And so the first one is simply just going up on a 1, 3, 5, 8 pattern, and you're going to hold the high note as long as you can comfortably hold it. So you do Ah, and hold it as long as you can. You want to do this in an exercise and not songs. One of the biggest mistakes that singers make is they don't deal with stamina until they're working on a song. And then the song becomes this whole mental issue where you're going, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I can get through this phrase. And of course you're worried about it because the only place you're working on it is in a song. But if you're doing the stamina drills on a daily basis and getting to the point that you can hold out that top note for 10 seconds, and all of a sudden you come across a note that you have to hold out for 5 counts in a song, it's not going to be a big deal to you because every day you work on sustaining pitches. So you're going to do those first. You're going to take that up to as high as you can comfortably go and as low as you can comfortably go. And then the second variation of this is to start doing 9-tone scales. And these are going to train you. So the sustained high note is going to teach you stamina for sustained pitches. This next exercise is going to teach you stamina for sustained phrases. And this, we're going to do a 9-tone scale. It sounds like this. Okay. And we're going to do that and repeat it several times on the top like this. See how long you can make it go. Okay. You're, of course, not going to start with that many of them, but that's where we want to eventually get you to. First, you're just going to do one turn. When that feels good, you'll do 2. And then you'll make it 3. And then you'll keep expanding it as you're able to. Again, you can take this as high as you can go, take it as low as you can go comfortably. And while you're doing this, you really want to focus on keeping that rib cage expanded and letting it slowly come in. And then when you feel like you're running out of breath and you're to the last bit of what you can do, that's when I want you to start contracting your abdominal wall. And as you contract that abdominal wall, it's going to help pull your rib cage down towards your pelvis, which is going to squeeze out that last remaining bit of air and help you get to the end of that phrase. So what I would say is get started on those and, give yourself time. Maybe just expect that you're going to just do sustained pitches for the first couple weeks, then one 9-tone scale with maybe a second turn for the next couple weeks. And once that's comfortable, start adding them on until you get to those big, long, extended phrases.
That's great. How many of them did you do? Was that 7 I counted, or
I don't know. I just go until it stops.
All right, we're gonna have a singing longest note contest here pretty soon.
There you go. I'm gonna have to get in shape if we're doing that.
Stamina. So, all right, we got one more question here, and then I'm gonna zoom over to the chat. So this one comes in from Hi Callum here, or Hi Call here. And anyway, they write in How to Sing Opportunity by Annie. So
great. So this is a song from the movie Annie. And I went to, listen to it again to kind of pick up a couple of tips for him. We haven't really covered how to sing a song on this show yet. So I thought we would go ahead and jump on in and give you some tips. So what I want to say, I'm just going to say H at this point because I don't want to mess up your name. I wish we had a pronunciation of it. But in the beginning of the song, she's singing with a light speech mix. And so what you want to do is just start off with your speaking voice, but a lighter quality of it, kind of like you would talk to a baby. You wouldn't walk up to a baby and yell at the baby. You would talk in a softer voice so you don't spook it. So that's where this song is going to start. Now, the key is that when you're listening to this recording, the singer is on a microphone. And that microphone is going to make the breathy singing seem really loud. But in real life, it's probably not. So I want you to remember that. Again, think baby talking volume. When you listen to the recording, it's going to sound louder. If you can find a microphone, practice on it, and you're going to find out that you can be louder too. When you're doing this, one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they end up trying to squeeze their throat to hold their voice soft, kind of like I'm doing right now. That's not what we want. That's actually going to really fatigue you, and it's going to get in the way. Instead, you want to exhale air out to make it soft. You want to feel like there's a lot of quality to the sound, like you're just breathing out as you sing. That's going to set you up here inside of the main verse part and get you the quality that you're hearing on the recording. Now, you're going to want to bring in some stylistic qualities that you hear throughout. And there's a lot of sliding of pitches. A lot of times when you're in a choir, or if you've taken classical voice lessons, you learn to hit notes exact. And that is a European art music trait, but it's not what's found in a lot of commercial styles. So yes, there are spots in here. And if you listen to the recording, you're going to hear where it's supposed to be exact, but go ahead and scoop into pitches and scoop down to pitches. The scooping and sliding is part of the emotional release of the song. You don't want to stifle that. Taking that out of the picture would actually be a mistake. And you're going to also want to play around with where the onsets, the beginnings of the words are more breathy as you go into them, or where they're clean. And so find breathy onsets and releases where it feels like air starts and then the air fades. And then find places where it cleanly starts and grows and then cleanly fades. By doing that work, you're going to start to get the first level of nuance that this song needs. Now, when I was listening to this recording, I did notice that there is some auto-tune on it. And I jumped over to catch the movie, and the movie doesn't appear to be auto-tuned. Now, I don't think that that's out of the ordinary. When you're watching the movie, you have the visual aspect of the song, which is this, Annie getting up to sing on a microphone in a live performance. And when we have that visual of her turning and looking at her family and looking at the audience and looking at the orchestra, little changes in the voice make sense to us because we know this is a nervous girl or just a girl getting up to perform. And we can accept that. And we are at one with those vocal little quirks and things that are normal human nature. But the problem is auto-tune has become so common that when we hear those little quirks and those little slight imperfections in a recorded performance, we tend to have a negative reaction to it. And so producers with these major record companies will often go through and tune up any imperfection that they see to try to make the voice sound perfect. And it's got a digitized sound, kind of like if you've ever been streaming a song and then you end up getting, a bump in your Wi-Fi or a bump in your signal and you hear those little digital artifacts coming through. Listen for those digital artifacts and realize that there is some auto-tune. So when you hear that some of the licks sound super clean and super tight, that's not really what they are. So what I want you to do is to continue to let your voice have that same freedom we were talking about when we're saying release the air when you sing. And finally, there's the belty part. And when it comes to the belty part, there is our what we're born with and our age that both come in to impact. And I'm not sure how old you are, and I'm not sure how old the actress is in the movie. But what I can tell you is that before the age of puberty, the voice sometimes will belt one way, and after puberty, it's going to belt another way. Some people can't belt before puberty. They struggle right after, but as they get to be in their late teens, early 20s, their belt voice pops out. So you need to keep in mind that that's a very individual thing. If you're able to belt, awesome. If you're not, then try to work with a coach, because a coach can start helping you figure out where your voice is. We're going to want to establish your mix first, but after we get your mix established, we can transform that into a belt. And yet again, the singer is on a microphone, so you have to remember that the microphone is making the voice sound a little bit more powerful than it might be if you were in the room with the singer. And what I would say is with younger singers is using a little bit of nasality is never a bad thing. Nasality encourages a slight narrowing of the throat that can help us get the frequencies necessary for belt. And it also can help open up what's called the veilopharyngeal port, which is this little opening behind the uvula that's in your mouth. And when we open up that little hole, it can release pressure on our throat. So to find that sound, I just want you to sing on a little bit of a nasalized no. No, 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 no. And then you're going to just let that flow out of you, feeling that there's a release of air. Do those exercises, those drills, and then sing the melody in that spot where it's belt-like, and then try to put your words in that spot. And there's a lot more to belting than that, but that's one simple exercise you can try. So just to summarize again in the beginning, it's a light speech-like mix, like the volume of what you would talk to a baby if you were playing with a baby. I got a nephew who's 7 months old, and if you use your light little voice, he'll smile at you. It's real adorable. So that kind of a voice, that kind of a setting. Realize that they're on a microphone, and that's part of the reason it's going to sound a little bit bigger. You're definitely going to want to go ahead and follow the slides and the other unique stylistic traits that you're hearing on the recording. Realize there's a little auto-tune. So if you're like, man, that little lick sounds so clean and I can't get it that clean, that's because it's made by a computer, not by a person. And then finally, in the belt area, realize that you may not be physiologically to the point yet where that belt's going to come out. It varies person to person. You can try that little nasalization mix in there. Eventually, you can get rid of the nasality. It's not permanent. And when in doubt, consult a professional voice teacher. They could help you get to the result in months instead of years, and it's totally worth the investment.
Awesome, awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's check there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's check the chat, see what questions we have here. Oh, hey, Wendy, thanks for tuning in. Oh, that's great. Yes, raspberries too. Lip trills, it's questionable, I guess. Some people like them, some people don't. They sometimes are not the best for beginners. So sometimes a little work on that. So awesome, awesome. Well, I don't see any more questions, and so we'll just hang out. Matt, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I like the question we started off with tonight about the cool down and using the straws. I think it's just important to come back to that and saying that, with all of this work, you definitely want to be trying to cool down after anything you sing. That's the one thing. If anything, I look that we haven't talked about enough on the show, it's probably that. Is that, if you've been singing real vigorously, you don't want to just walk away and have a tight throat. So, you can even just do some self massage. You don't want to push hard, but just lightly touch your skin, just like if you're just, petting a cat. The amount, if you pet a cat too hard, it's going to rip your hand off and take all the skin, on your arm with it. So you would imagine petting a cat, an angry cat, trying to calm it down, and just use that kind of pressure on your throat and just to kind of, massage things out. Remind your body that it can let go, it can relax, and grab your straws. Get that throat to open up and feel the dropping back to more of a neutral position that it brings along with it. And it's a really important step to keeping your voice healthy.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. If you got any questions, let us know.
Happy Halloween.